Howdy, 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 boys and girls. Welcome back to Mr. Herring's 5th grade math lessons online. Today, 12-12-19, we are continuing our unit on fractions. We are wrapping it up with the division piece. So today I can divide unit fractions by whole numbers, or I can divide whole numbers by unit fractions using models and without models, all right? So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. So in our notes, we glued into our journal, and again, this page is in our interactive notebook online here. I believe it's on page, oh, I don't know what page it's on. But we're talking about dividing a fraction by a whole number first, okay? So when I do that, if I look at dividing a fraction by a whole number, my problem here is 1/3 divided by 4. So pay attention to the fact that 1/3 is first. The fraction comes first. So that's something to remember when a fraction is first. So if I look here, this whole piece represents a whole, and 1/3 of it is right here. Okay, so 1/3. I'm gonna go ahead and shade in 1/3 of my picture. All right, and but I need to divide it by 4. Okay, so we're going to divide it by 4. Make that a little bit clearer. We're going to divide that by 4. All right, so when I divide it by 4, we do this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now I'm only counting 1/3 of them, so I only need one piece. So this is my one piece right here. So if I look at that, that is my one piece. 1 out of 2, 3. 1 out of those 3. 1/3. Okay, that's 1/3. But look at the whole. How much is shaded now? I have got 1 out of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What I really have is 1 out of 12 shaded now. Okay, that's a model. That's the model we're looking at right there. All right. So now let's look at the math. Let's take a look at the math. The math is really interesting. So if I have 1/3 divided by 4, I notice that my fraction is in front. So if I'm, something to remember, if I start with a fraction, I'm going to end with a fraction in my answer. If I look down here, the first step says change the whole number to a fraction. Well, this whole number, because the whole number is second, we're making it smaller, so I'm dividing by a smaller number, 1/4. So I add a 1 to the numerator of the whole number. I don't flip the second fraction here. I don't look for a reciprocal because I'm dividing by a whole number. So there is no reciprocal to worry about here. The third step says change the operation to multiplication. So I change division to multiplication. Now I have 1/3 times 1/4. And then my fourth step is just multiply and simplify as needed. So 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 4 is 12. So 1/12 matches my picture. So down here, what you should have done in your notes is cut this into two pieces. I start with writing the fraction, the problem, 1/3 divided by 1/4, because I added a 1. I changed the whole number to a fraction. We didn't do the flipping of it. We changed the operation from division to multiplication, and then we multiplied to get the answer 12. Okay? So I like to do the chant. You guys heard me do the chant today. We add a 1, change the sign, and multiply. Okay, add a 1, change the sign, multiply when the fraction is first, because we're making it smaller. All right, so I have 1/12. I made it a smaller answer. I'm going to clean that up a little bit. Okay, 1/12. Let's practice that. Oh, let's look at dividing a whole number by a fraction now. Now we're taking a whole number first. So I have 6 whole pieces. You can see my 6 whole pieces. And I want to divide those 6 whole pieces into fourths. So I cut them into fourths. And if I cut those 6 whole pieces into fourths, I now have 4 pieces, 4 pieces, 4, 4, 4, 4, for a total of 24 pieces. I like that a lot. Now let's look at the math. This is my favorite fraction chant. So we have 6 divided by 1/4. Notice that my whole number is first. When the whole number is first, when I change the whole number to a fraction this time, I add a 1 below it because I'm not changing the size of the whole number. Okay? The whole number isn't getting smaller, or my number of pieces aren't getting smaller, they're getting larger. Okay? So now 6, I add a 1. So if I go back to my bottom down here, I told you to draw a line. That's not getting big enough for me. So if you would draw a line like we did the first time, give yourself some room. On the bottom, we'll write 6/1 divided by 1/4. So we add a 1. Second step is flip the second fraction to get its reciprocal. So we have 6/1 divided by, now we'll flip this fraction and make it 4/1. So 6/1 divided by 4/1. The third step is change the operation to multiplication. So 6/1 times 4/1. And then multiply across and simplify if needed. So 6 times 4, 24. 1 times 1 is 1. Now the chant I use here is add a 1, change the sign, flip the fraction, and multiply. I love that, how that sounds. Add a 1, change the sign, flip the fraction, and multiply. And the other one we just had add a 1, change the sign, multiply. But if the whole number comes first, then we have to do that reciprocal. We have to flip that fraction. Okay? And we're going to get a lot of practice. Okay? So let's divide whole numbers by fractions. Here, this number line, Mia walks 2 miles. She walks a 2-mile fitness trail. She stops to exercise every 1/5 mile. How many times does Mia stop to exercise? Here's mile 1. Here's mile 2. She stops 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the first mile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the second mile, for a total of 10 stops. So in that, then 2 whole divided by 1/5 gives me 10. Or 10 stops times 1/5 gives me 2 whole. If we check that math, 2 divided by 1/5, add a 1, change the sign, flip the fraction, multiply. 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 1 is 1, equals 10. It matches. Okay? Notice, I started with a whole number. I ended with a whole number. Okay? When I'm dividing, if I start with a whole number, I end with a whole number. This one, Roger has 2 yards of string. 1 yard, 2 yards. He cut string into 3 equal pieces. My question is, how many pieces of string does Roger have? He's got 3 in the first yard, 3 in the second yard, for a total of 6 yards. So then 2 whole divided by 1/3 gives me 6 pieces, because 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 1/3 equals 2 whole. Okay? All right? So look at this number line. What label should I write for each tick mark? So let's count how many spaces between 0 and 1. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So each piece is worth 1/6. So then I have 6 pieces between 1 and 2, or 0 and 1, 6 pieces between 1 and 2, and 6 pieces between 2 and 3, for a total of 18 pieces. So 3 divided by 1/6 gives me a total of 18. And 18 times 1/6 gives me a total of 3. If I put 18 1/6 together, 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6, 18 times, it would equal 18/6, which equals 3. All right? So 5 divided by 1/3. Let's use pictures. I've got 5 whole. I break them into fifths. Not very good at drawing fifths, I'm sorry. I shade in. Oh, I'm sorry, it should be thirds. I made a mistake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I shade in 1/3 of each one. That gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thirds. So 1 2/3. Nope, that's not right. I'm sorry. That is not right. So let's do the math first. Add a 1, change the sign, flip the fraction, and multiply. 5 times 3 is 15 over 1. So I've got 5 pieces. I cut them into thirds. I don't have to shade any of them in. That gives me 3 pieces, 3 pieces, 3 pieces, 3 pieces, 3 pieces. Gives me 15 pieces, total pieces. Sorry about that. Had a little brain freeze there. All right. So ants are lined up along the edge of your sandwich at a picnic. If the sandwich is 9 inches around and each ant eats 1/6 of an inch, how many ants are lined up around your sandwich? So I've got 9 inches. I'm dividing them by 1/6 of an ant. So I add a 1, change the sign, flip the fraction, and multiply. 54 over 1 equals 54. Okay. All right, next question. Reed has 4 bags of soil. 1, 2, 3. He cuts each bag. He can use 1/3 of a bag to fill each planter. So 1/3 of a bag gives me a planter. So I cut them into 1/3. So how many planters can Reed fill with the bags? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The math, 4 bags divided by 1/3, 4 over 1 times 3 over 1 equals 12 over 1. Notice, whole number comes first. Whole number is my answer. Okay, Maddie divided 6 by 1/2. So 6 divided by 1/2, 6 over 1 times 2 over 1 equals 12 over 1 equals 12. Then divided that answer by 1/3. So 12 divided by 1/3. So over 1 times 3 over 1 gives me 36 over 1, or 36. Okay? So I'm going to let you practice these. 5 divided by 1/3. Work it out, hit pause, get your answer. When you're ready to see the answer, hit play and I'll show you the answer. 15. 12 divided by 1/3, hit pause, work it out. When you're ready to see the answer, hit play. 2 divided by 1/3, hit pause, work it out. 'There you go. Check your answers. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to dividing a fraction by a whole number. Okay. So like we did in the beginning, we have 1/4 divided by 3. Okay, so I took 1/4 and I divided that 1/4 by 3 pieces. And then I shaded in one of those fourths. Shade in one of them. And that gives me 1 out of 3, 6, 9, 12. So my answer is smaller. I start with a fraction. I end with a fraction. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and try some of those. I'm going to skip this. Well, we can do this. 1/5 divided by 2. I don't like using the model in a circle way. So if I have 1/5 and I cut them in half, divided by 2, and I shade one of them, now I have 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1/10. Again, I start with a fraction, I end with a fraction. The math, 1/5 divided by 1/2. 1/5 times 1/2 equals 1/10. Okay, so in a relay race that covers 1/4 of a mile, each of 4 runners run the exact same distance. What is the distance each runner runs? So I'm taking 1/4 of a mile and dividing that by 4 people. So I add a 1, change the sign, and multiply. 1 times 1 is 1, 4 times 4 is 16. So they run 1/16 of a mile. Your friend asks you to watch his iguana over 4 days of winter break. He gives you 1/3 pound of food to feed the iguana. If you give the iguana the same amount of food daily, how much will you give the iguana each day? Here's a tricky one. You have to know what you're dividing. Are we dividing the days or are we dividing the food? Yes, we're dividing the food. So what number goes with the food? 1/3. So I'm dividing 1/3 by 4 days. So the rules are add a 1, change the sign, and multiply. 1 times 1 is 1, 3 times 4 is 12. The answer is 1/12 of a pound. Okay? So let's do some practice here. I'm going to hit next. You work it out on your board. Hit pause. When you're ready to see the answer, hit play to show the answer. First question, 1/3 divided by 8. The answer is 1/24. 1/8 divided by 7. Hit pause. The answer is 1/56. 1/6 divided by 9. The answer is 1/54. 1/4 divided by 12. The answer is 1/48. Last one, 1/5 divided by 5. The answer is 1/25. Okay? All right, last question. So Miss Olson has 1/8 acre of land divided into 6 equal parts. So a model one-eighth of an acre of land and divide it into 6 equal pieces. Okay? And then what size is each part? So 1/8 divided into 6. So I got to cut all these into 6 pieces. Not very easy. 6 pieces. So one of them is 1 out of 48. So the answer is 1/48. Let's do the math. 1/8 divided by 6 equals 1/8 times 1/6 equals 1/48. All right. Feel free to go back and look at the notes part again, get a good grasp of it, maybe even make up your own practice problems. If you have any questions, feel free to come and see me, okay? All right, guys, good luck.